You're gonna sign those papers! No! Leave me alone!
Wifi? No, I said. The word was barely louder than the air moving through the oxygen tube beneath my nose, but everyone in the hospital room heard it. My name is Emily Carter. I was 36 years old, lying in a trauma bed in Columbus, Ohio with 3 broken ribs, a fractured ankle, a bruised shoulder, and a purple mark running from my temple to my jaw. Less than an hour earlier, my sister had moved my call button beyond my reach and unplugged my heart monitor, and my mother had watched her do it. Officer Daniels stepped closer to my bed. No, what? He asked. I looked toward the far rail. The call button was still there, several inches beyond the reach of my braced hand. It wasn't an accident, I whispered. The nurse standing beside him did not look surprised. Her name was Alina Martinez. She had been the first person through the door when the monitor went dark. Officer Daniels pulled a chair beside my bed and lowered his voice. Tell me what happened. For most of my life, whenever someone asked me a question in front of my mother or my younger sister, Tessa, I searched their faces before answering. I watched my mother's tightened mouth. I noticed Tessa's raised eyebrow. I listened for the warning hidden inside their silence. But they were not in the room now. So, for the first time, I told the truth without asking their permission. Tessa moved the button after I woke up, I said. My ribs started hurting. I tried to reach it, but I couldn't. She told me I didn't need to bother anyone. Officer Daniels wrote something down. Did she know you couldn't reach it? Les, did your mother see her move it? I closed my eyes. Saying the next word felt more painful than breathing. Yes. The room remained still. No one laughed. No one corrected me. No one said I was confused because of the medicine. No one told me I had remembered it wrong. Elena explained that the monitor had recorded the exact moment it was disconnected. The central nursing station had received an automatic alert, even though the screen beside my bed had gone black. Tessa had not destroyed the evidence. She had created more of it. Officer Daniels asked if I remembered what happened before the monitor went dark. At first, I thought I did not. Then I remembered Tessa leaning over me. Her perfume had been so strong that it made me sick. She had whispered, "When you get out of here, you're going to fix what you did." I repeated the sentence. Officer Daniels stopped writing. What did she mean? My heartbeat quickened, and the machine announced it with sharp little beeps. Elena placed her hand near my wrist, careful not to touch the bruised skin. You're safe, she said. Take your time. I stared at the ceiling and let the morning return. It had started with a lunch invitation from my mother. She said she wanted the 3 of us to discuss Grandma Rose's house. My grandmother had left that house to me 3 years earlier. It was a modest 2-story home surrounded by maple trees. The kitchen floor creaked, the upstairs bathroom needed new plumbing, and the furnace complained every winter. But the mortgage was paid, and every room held the only peaceful memories I had from childhood. Grandma Rose had taught me that love did not need to shout. She listened when I spoke. She never made me earn kindness. I learned the opposite lesson at home. My father left when I was 9, and after that my mother treated every disagreement like a threat to our survival. Tessa discovered early that tears could move our mother faster than facts. If Tessa broke something, I was told to be understanding. If she borrowed my clothes without asking, I was told to share. If she insulted me and I objected, my mother said I was old enough to know better. At 12, I gave Tessa the bicycle I had saved for her because she cried when she saw it. At 17, I used my summer earnings to replace a phone she had lost. At 24, I paid a utility bill after she spent her money on a weekend trip. Each time, my mother praised me for being the dependable daughter. I thought dependable meant loving. Years later, I understood that it meant useful. Grandma Rose saw what was happening. One afternoon when I was helping her plant flowers, she asked why I apologized every time I expressed an opinion. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She put down her garden shovel and said, "Emily, kindness is something you give. Surrender is something people take. Learn the difference before someone takes too much." I remembered those words many times, but remembering was easier than changing. Even after Grandma died and left me the house, I continued rescuing Tessa. I told myself I was keeping the family together. In truth, I was afraid of what would happen if I stopped. That house was more than property. It was proof that I had once been safe somewhere. Tessa had recently opened an expensive clothing boutique called Silver Thread. She posted photographs of champagne openings, designer displays, and smiling customers. What she did not post were the overdue invoices, the unpaid rent, and the credit cards she had pushed to their limits. She wanted me to use Grandma's house as security for a business loan. I had already paid the deposit on the boutique. Before that, I had covered her rent twice, repaired her car, settled a credit card, and paid for a marketing course she quit after 1 week. Every rescue became proof, in her mind, that she deserved another. At lunch, my mother placed a stack of papers in front of me. "It's temporary," she said. "Once the holiday sales begin, Tessa will repay everything." I read the first page. The loan was larger than they had told me. If the boutique failed, the lender could take Grandma's house. "I'm not signing this." Tessa stared at me. "You haven't even read all of it." "I read enough." My mother reached across the table. "Emily, families help each other. I have helped." "Then help one more time." There was always one more time. I pushed the papers back. My hands were shaking, but my voice was not. "No." Tessa's face changed. The wounded sister disappeared, and the person beneath her came forward. "Grandma only left you that house because you manipulated her." That was not true. Tessa rarely visited Grandma unless she needed money. I had spent years bringing groceries, driving her to medical appointments, and sitting beside her on the porch while she told stories I had heard many times before. My mother picked up the papers. "You are punishing your sister because Grandma preferred you." "I'm protecting my home." Then I did something I had never done before. I stood up and walked away without apologizing. Tessa followed me onto the porch. "You'll regret humiliating me," she shouted. My mother stood behind her, pressing the unsigned papers against her chest. I got into my car and drove away. 6 minutes later, Tessa's black SUV appeared in my rearview mirror. She drove so close that I could no longer see her headlights. My phone rang through the car speakers. I declined the call. It rang again. And again. At the next traffic light, she pulled beside me and pointed toward a parking lot. I shook my head. When the light changed, I drove forward. She stayed beside me. I could see her shouting through the closed window. Then her SUV began drifting into my lane. I moved right, she moved closer. For 1 second, I saw the hard set of her mouth and both hands gripping the steering wheel. Then a delivery van came around the bend in the opposite lane. I turned sharply to avoid it. My tires left the pavement. The car struck a guardrail, spun, and rolled down a shallow embankment. I remembered metal folding, glass exploding, a terrible pressure across my chest. Then a stranger's voice telling me not to move. When I opened my eyes in the hospital, my mother was sitting beside me. Tessa stood near the window. My mother took my hand and said, "You scared us." For a moment, I believed her. Then Tessa asked, "Do you remember why you went off the road?" I tried to answer, but my throat was dry. My mother gave me water. "The doctor said you may be confused." Tessa came closer. "You were driving too fast. You lost control." I looked from one face to the other. "Were you there?" I asked. "Where?" Tessa replied too quickly. My mother squeezed my hand hard enough to hurt. "Rest, Emily." That was when I noticed a folder sticking out of Tessa's purse. The corner of the loan papers was visible inside it. I pressed the call button. Tessa reached over and lifted it from my hand. "You don't need to bother the nurses," she said. She placed it against the far rail. Then my ribs tightened. I could not draw a full breath. I reached for the button, but my arm was braced. "Please," I said. My mother looked at Tessa. Tessa looked at the monitor. She leaned close to me and whispered that I was going to fix what I had done. Then she pulled the cable from the wall. The screen went black. For several seconds, all I could hear was my own shallow breathing. Tessa believed darkness and silence would frighten me into obedience. Instead, the door opened. Elena entered with 2 other nurses and a hospital security officer. She looked at the loose cable, the call button, and my face. "Who disconnected this?" she asked. Tessa said it had fallen out. Elena plugged it in and checked the connection. "This locking cable does not fall out." My mother began explaining that I was emotional and confused. Elena asked both of them to step outside while she examined me. The moment the door closed, she placed the call button in my palm. "Do you feel safe with those visitors?" I had spent 36 years saying yes when the honest answer was no. That day, I finally gave the honest answer. Officer Daniels listened as I described all of it. When I finished, he told me that a traffic camera had captured Tessa's SUV behind my car less than a minute before the crash. The delivery van also had a dashboard camera. Its driver, Marcus Hill, had stopped to help me and given the recording to police. The video showed Tessa accelerating toward my car twice. It showed her forcing me toward the shoulder. It also showed her slowing after my car left the road, then driving away before the ambulance arrived. She had been there. My mother knew it. Their visit to the hospital had not been about concern. They had come to discover how much I remembered. Officer Daniels closed his notebook. "Do you want them allowed back into this room?" The old answers rose automatically. "They are family. They will be angry." Maybe I am making everything worse. Then I looked at the call button in my hand. No, I said. I don't want them near me. By evening, hospital security had escorted them from the building. Tessa shouted that I was destroying the family. My mother cried that she could not believe I would choose strangers over my own blood. I heard them through the closed door. For once, I did not answer. A hospital social worker named Mariah Lewis helped me remove them as emergency contacts. My best friend Claire replaced my mother's name on every form. Claire arrived less than an hour later with wet hair and one shoe untied. When she saw the sling, the brace, and the bruises, she stopped in the doorway. Then she sat beside me and took my uninjured hand. She did not ask why I had waited so long to tell her. She did not tell me what I should have done. She only said, "You never have to go back to them." I began crying before she finished the sentence. Over the next 2 days, the case grew larger. Phone records showed that Tessa had called me 11 times in 6 minutes. The one voicemail had recorded her shouting that I would sign the loan papers, one way or another. Police recovered messages between Tessa and my mother. My mother had written, "Make sure she doesn't tell the hospital you were following her." Tessa had replied, "She won't. She never says anything when she's scared." That message hurt more than my broken ribs. They had built their plan around my silence. They believed it was the most dependable thing about me. But the hospital had more evidence. A hallway cameras showed my mother handing Tessa the unsigned property documents before they entered my room. Security found those papers inside Tessa's purse. My name had been written on the signature line. It was not my handwriting. The date beside the signature was the day of my crash, during the hours I had been unconscious. A detective named Rachel Brooks came to my room. She explained that investigators believed the road incident and the hospital pressure were connected to the attempted loan fraud. "Your sister says she unplugged the monitor because she was frustrated," Detective Brooks told me. "Your mother says she signed some hospital forms because she was helping you." I looked at the copy of the forged property document. They always call it helping. Detective Brooks leaned forward. "We also found something you need to know." She placed a printed email on the table. It had been sent by Tessa to a loan broker 2 days before the crash. The message said that all owners had approved the property as collateral, and that signed documents would arrive by Friday. Friday was the day I had said no. Tessa had promised my signature before she ever asked for it. That was the mystery I had not understood. This was not a desperate decision made after lunch. It had been planned in advance. My mother had sent Tessa a photograph of my driver's license. Tessa had copied my old signature from a birthday check I gave her the previous year. They expected me to cooperate, but they had prepared a forgery in case I refused. The crash was not part of their original plan. It happened when Tessa lost control of her anger. The cover-up began the moment she saw my car leave the road. Detective Brooks asked if I was willing to give a formal statement. My hands shook. Claire squeezed my fingers. Elena stood quietly near the door. For most of my life, my mother had taught me that telling the truth about our family was betrayal. She never described what they did as betrayal. Only my response to it. I took a breath. Less. My statement lasted nearly 2 hours. I described the crash, the hospital room, the papers, the call button, and the years of pressure that came before them. I expected someone to interrupt. No one did. 3 weeks later, I entered the county courthouse on crutches. My face had mostly healed, but my ankle was still braced and every step pulled against my ribs. Claire walked beside me. Mariah had helped me request a protective order. Tessa sat across the aisle in a pale blue dress, wearing the wounded expression she used whenever consequences found her. My mother sat beside her. For one dangerous second, I wanted to cross the room and apologize. Then Tessa looked at my crutches and rolled her eyes. The feeling disappeared. My mother testified first. She said she had only wanted to help both daughters. She claimed that I often misunderstood Tessa because I was too sensitive. The judge studied photographs of my injuries and the hospital report. "Sensitive to what?" he asked. My mother had no answer. Tessa's attorney argued that the monitor had been disconnected for less than a minute, and that no permanent physical harm had occurred. Elena came to testify. "The length of the disconnection does not change the risk," she said. "The patient was injured, medicated, physically restricted, and unable to reach her call button." The attorney asked if I had appeared unconscious. "No," Elena replied. She appeared frightened. Then the judge asked if I wished to speak. My knees weakened. Claire whispered that I could do it. I stood slowly and faced my mother and sister. My whole life I was told that keeping the peace meant staying quiet. I began. But there was never peace. There was only silence, and silence always protected the person causing the harm. Tessa stared at the table. My mother looked toward the judge as if waiting for someone to stop me. No one did. I almost lost my home because I was trained to believe that saying no made me selfish. I almost lost the right to explain my own injuries because my family spoke for me while I was unconscious. When I woke up, they removed the one thing that could alert the nurses if I needed help. My voice trembled, but I continued. I am not asking the court to punish them for hurting my feelings. I am asking for the right to recover without being followed, threatened, contacted, or told that my memory does not belong to me. The courtroom became silent. This time, silence did not feel dangerous. It felt like everyone was listening. The judge granted the protective order. My mother and Tessa were forbidden from approaching my home, contacting me directly, or sending anyone else to pressure me. As I turned to leave, my mother called my real name, not the childish nickname she used when she wanted something. Emily, she said. Please don't do this to us. I faced her. I didn't do this to you. The criminal investigation continued. Then, 2 months later, Detective Brooks called with news that made my stomach turn. The loan broker had discovered another application connected to Tessa's boutique. It used Grandma's house as collateral, but it also listed a bank account in my name. I had never opened that account. Tessa had used copies of my identification to create it online. Small transfers from my mother had made the account appear active. If the loan had been approved, the money would have passed through an account bearing my name. If fraud investigators discovered it later, I could have looked like a willing participant. Tessa had not only planned to take my house, she had planned to leave me holding the crime. For the first time, my mother seemed to understand that Tessa would sacrifice anyone, even her. The account transfers carried my mother's name. The emails showed that she had provided my identification. Tessa's lawyer began suggesting that my mother had designed the entire scheme. Their alliance cracked as soon as protecting each other became inconvenient. My mother contacted my attorney and offered to cooperate. She turned over Tessa's laptop, several messages, and a notebook containing loan figures. She admitted that she knew about the forged signature. She claimed she had believed I would eventually forgive them, as I always had before. That confession was the final evidence prosecutors needed. Tessa accepted a plea agreement rather than face trial. She admitted reckless driving, interfering with medical equipment, identity fraud, and attempting to use documents she knew I had not signed. The judge imposed supervised probation, home confinement, mandatory counseling, community service, restitution, and a long-term no-contact order. Her driver's license was suspended, and the fraud conviction followed her long after the boutique closed. My mother also faced consequences. She was ordered to repay money connected to the false account, complete counseling and community service, and remain bound by the protective order. Her cooperation reduced the penalty, but it did not erase what she had done. Grandma Rose's house remained mine. At first, I imagined revenge would feel like watching Tessa lose her store and seeing my mother forced to admit the truth. But when those things happened, I did not feel powerful. I felt tired. Real justice was quieter. It was changing the locks. It was freezing my credit and discovering that no one could sign my name again. It was sleeping through the night without waking to dozens of messages. It was opening my mailbox without finding a demand disguised as a family emergency. It was physical therapy on Tuesday mornings, learning to trust my injured leg one careful step at a time. It was signing my own medical forms. Recovery was not a straight path. Some mornings I woke convinced I had exaggerated everything. I would hear my mother's voice in my mind, telling me that Tessa had only panicked and that good sisters forgave mistakes. Then Claire would show me the police report, or I would feel the achy in my ribs, and the truth would return. My therapist taught me to separate guilt from responsibility. Guilt was the feeling I had been trained to carry. Responsibility belonged to the people who made the choices. I also began rebuilding parts of my life I had neglected. I reopened Grandma's garden. I repainted the front room a warm yellow instead of the gray my mother preferred. I turned the spare bedroom into an office for my bookkeeping business. Every small decision felt strange at first, because no one was waiting to approve it. The greatest change happened on an ordinary Tuesday. A client asked me to lower my fee after I had already completed extra work. My old instinct was to agree and apologize. Instead, I calmly said no. The client paused, then said, "All right." That was all. No shouting, no punishment, no family disaster. I drove home laughing and crying at the same time. For years I had believed every boundary would cause a crash. And now I understood that healthy people could hear the word no without trying to destroy the person who said it. The hospital changed its procedures after reviewing my case. Staff members received new guidance for privately interviewing vulnerable patients when relatives tried to speak for them. Visitor rules about medical equipment became stricter. Elena received a patient safety award. When I congratulated her, she shook her head. I only did my job. You believed me before I could explain everything. That was my job too, she said. 6 months after the crash, I returned to the hospital without crutches. My ankles still ached, and my ribs complained whenever rain moved into the city, but I was standing on my own. I brought Alina a framed card. On it, I had written, "Thank you for hearing the patient who had been taught not to make a sound." She read it twice before hugging me. Claire waited near the elevators, pretending not to cry. That evening, we had dinner at Grandma Rose's house. Mariah came after her shift. Officer Daniel stopped by with his wife. Elena brought a pie she insisted was store-bought, although no one believed her. For the first time, my dining room was filled with people who did not need me to become smaller so they could feel important. We laughed without making anyone the target. We disagreed without punishment. When I said I was tired, no one called me dramatic. They cleared the table and told me to rest. After everyone left, I stood beside the window and watched the maple trees move in the dark. Grandma's old clock ticked in the hallway. The house was quiet, but it was no longer the quiet of fear. My mother had sent a letter through her attorney. She wrote that counseling had forced her to confront how often she protected Tessa by sacrificing me. She said she was sorry and asked whether we might speak again one day. An apology did not erase the hospital room. It did not erase the road, the forged papers, or the years I spent doubting my memories. But healing did not require me to hate her forever. It required me to stop abandoning myself. I sent one sentence through my attorney. I hope you change, but my recovery cannot depend on it. Maybe one day there would be another conversation. Maybe there would not. Either way, my life was no longer waiting for my mother's permission to begin. Before going upstairs, I checked the doors and turned off the lights. My phone rested peacefully on the kitchen counter. No threats. No demands. No one rewriting my day before I could describe it myself. In the hospital, Tessa unplugged my monitor because she believed darkness and silence could make the truth disappear. She was wrong. The screen came back on. The evidence remained. And so did I. For less than a minute, my heart monitor had gone silent. I had been silent for most of my life. But the day that monitor went dark became the day I finally found my voice. And once I found it, no one in my family could ever unplug it again.